and you did it, we're gonna have to bring you back so we can talk about just the book itself. But some of the key things that you address in the book that I want to at least connect to our conversation so far is the fact that there is the existence of policies that we have bought into, and we've bought into this idea that that it is a shortcoming in our character. It's a shortcoming in our behavior or our dress or our mannerisms, and that we look to that solely as the reason that a certain portion of the black community or the working class cannot succeed without ever looking to the structural problems. What would be some of the structural problems that it's a twofold question. What are some of the structural problems that you see that we need to fix? And do you feel that that black neoliberal class, particularly the political class, would be in solidarity with us on that as much as they are on racial justice and police violence?
So to answer your second question, no, not without organizing, right? Even though we all hurt, we all suffer, right? We don't all suffer equally, right? And as much as the structural problems that I identify would, whether you're talking about education, where consistently we're expected to, I'm sending my son, he's going to Michigan like in a few days. I'm responsible for his education, right? I'm responsible to pay all the costs for his education, as opposed to when we were younger, Pell Grants covered most of that bill, right? One of the things that Bernie Sanders articulated, and Adolf was one of the first to organize around it in black communities, was the idea that public education should be free, right? That our taxes should cover that, right? That's a structural issue, right? The ability of us to the ability of a state like California, right? So California is really, really hard for them to raise taxes. You need, I believe, like a 75% majority in the state, in the legislatures now, a super majority to pass taxes, right? Something like that should be gotten rid of. In the state of Illinois, you need a 75% vote of all members of a union for like the teachers union to strike. We need to actually repeal that. Right? You're talking about we've made a transition where a significant portion of our economy is driven by the fire, and it's a combination of finance, insurance, and real estate, and we're actually not taxing that almost at all, right? That's billions upon billions of dollars that we actually need to be getting back, because it's not even like, I mean, GM at least produced cars. When they made most of their loot producing cars, they produced something.
Right.
Now I think we're at the time where GM probably makes more money off their financing wing. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's those types of structural dynamics that we need to deal with, and we need to aggressively deal with if we're to deal with our infrastructure issue, if we're to actually create opportunities for large swaths of poor and working class populations, black and non-black. And to the extent that neoliberal class, that upper segment of the black communities, they actually indirectly benefit. I think what we're going to have is kind of I'm a heathen, but I'm gonna say kind of a come to Jesus moment in black communities. What we're basically going to have is black people, working class black people, organizing on behalf of themselves, organizing around their interests, and using a variety of tactics and techniques in order to kind of flip the script as far as how black policy is articulated.
Yeah. So you're hitting dead on with this thing, this chip I have on my shoulder, because I've seen exactly the forces of some black media, not all, but some black media, black politicians being mobilized to the detriment of the working class and poor blacks' interests, but because of how potent and how, I don't want to say seductive, because it is a real thing, racial injustice and police violence, but because of how potent that issue is, they are always able to get us to stand in solidarity with them on that. But I have seen it be used, racial dynamics to be used against the best interests of the black working class, putting a division, or not putting because it was always there, but inflaming the division between poor blacks and poor whites, when in actuality there is some common ground, particularly with the way neoliberalism has ravaged both of our communities. So I don't want to drag you into that because I have a couple people on my list that I'm going to talk about when I get you off of air. But just if you have any thoughts or anything to speak to that, I would love to hear it, and then I'll let you get the last word.
Yeah, well, what we have to do is, so there are communities in, white working class communities in Essex and Dundalk in the state of Maryland, like and then you're out, the counties outside of Baltimore County and Baltimore City. Mm-hmm. There are whites who are beset by the same a similar set of structural circumstances, right? And we have to figure out a way to kind of lash our interests with theirs. Now I believe that because we experience so much hyper-segregation within places like Baltimore City, we have to organize there first.
Right.
But what we have to do is acknowledge that organizing in Baltimore City is a racial thing,
yeah.
quote unquote, but it really is a class thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's really about about giving people like Freddie Gray's family, like people like Tyrone West and his family. Tyrone West was another victim of another person murdered by police or in a police encounter. We have to increase their capacity to imagine alternatives and fight for alternatives that give them a better way of life. And then those efforts have to be lashed up alongside other similar efforts. Because what we have now is kind of a political project that at best, we've got these elites at top, maybe speaking truth to power. I mean, that's what they would articulate themselves as. But what they're really doing is they're brokering in such a way that they're getting the lion's share of the resources because they're brokering here between whites. Mm-hmm. So there's whites here, and there's black people down here, and then there's this strata of blacks in the middle where they're basically articulating a black agenda that only benefits them or primarily benefits them. Right, affirmative. To go back to the college thing. I am a beneficiary of affirmative action. I ride or die for Michigan because of affirmative action and because my dad worked for Ford and he was able to pay for me. Right, mm-hmm. But affirmative action isn't a black policy. It's a policy geared towards a thin slice. We have to start articulating our politics that way, and we have to move beyond a speaking truth to power model of politics and focus on political organizing.
Wow.